Gone free as the wind blows, as free as the grass grows. Space. A continuous extension interval between planets, stars and other objects. These are the critiques of the critic McElvoy. His continuing mission to review strange new shows, to seek out new work and new bastardizations, to boldly note what no critic has noted before. Hello critics, loggers, welcome back. Don't forget to lick and sublimate after you've watched this video. Yeah, we're back. We're back, baby. Why are we back? Because Star Trek is back. Well, not real Star Trek, but Star Trek Strange New Worlds, or Strange New Wounds, as I like to call it. The show that's sort of Star Trek, but not really. A kind of a Star Trek parody that's slowly overwriting original Trek's DNA, a bit like an alien infection, a bit like having, the Gorn take over your body, or the Borg, or any kind of, allegedly evil alien species that sort of works by parasitic forms of invasion and corruption and overwriting and things of that nature. Does that make any sense? Anyway, season 3 of Strange New Worlds hits us 2 years after the last episode aired.
Closer.
You remember that when Star Trek was made the old-fashioned way, 26 episodes a year, bang, 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 short summer hiatus, and so on, it made sense to have a cliffhanger, because you knew the show would be coming back within, short memory. When did the last one go out? 3 months ago. I remember that. Then I had my summer holiday, and now here's part 2. Hegemony, depending on which way you pronounce it. Part 1 was 2 years ago. 2 years. Do you remember how it ended? I mean, look, you knew there'd be a recap, right? But it's a bit arrogant to leave an audience waiting 2 years. This isn't TNG at the height of its popularity. This isn't a show that's just hit its peak in terms of its popular culture penetration, and it's being talked about everywhere. Hey, did you see Star Trek Strange New Worlds last night and the cliffhanger? Did you see that? No, I never watched it. In fact, I don't know what you're talking about. TNG was something else. When they went with their first cliffhanger, the best of both worlds, it got everybody talking, because by then that was a show that was established as a big pop cultural event in its own right. Now this was the equivalent for the writers of Strange New Worlds of their best of both worlds moment. They wanted a big two-parter with very high stakes, and the stakes don't usually in Star Trek get any higher than an invasion of the Federation. They wanted a big bad in TNG, they'd established the big bad to be the Borg, the sort of seemingly inconquerable, inhuman enemy. And what they've tried to do in Strange New Worlds is establish the Gorn from the original series to be that big bad. Does it matter that to do that they've had to completely rewrite the backstory of that alien race so that they are no longer congruous with the race that appeared in the classic TOS story Arena? Well, I would say that's pretty fucking important. And of course, as you'll know if you read the series of blogs that preceded this series of videos, that the people who ran Enterprise didn't use the Gorn precisely for that reason, because there was no gap in established continuity that would allow them to bring them in without altering the canon. They thought about it. They'd have loved to have had the Gorn, they said, but they couldn't. There was no way to do it, because Arena establishes very clearly that the Gorn were effectively unknowns prior to Arena.
Weaponless, I faced the creature the Metrones called a Gorn. Large, reptilian, like most humans. I seem to have an instinctive revulsion to reptiles. I must fight to remember that this is an intelligent, highly advanced individual, the captain of a starship like myself. Undoubtedly, a dangerously clever opponent.
Federation had no great knowledge of them, no great knowledge of their civilization, etc. And that was the whole point. Kirk learnt a little something about the Gorn. He learnt that they weren't mindless monsters. They just looked monstrous. But of course, perhaps we look monstrous to the Gorn. Isn't that what Star Trek's all about? Learning about each other, learning that superficial appearances are just that. They're just shells, facades. That beneath all of that, there's a sort of common, I don't want to sound racist, but humanity. We're not all that different, are we? Indeed, the chase establishes that we are 98% the same. But in order for the Gorn to be real villains, a real threat, real bastards, all of that has got to be undone. And indeed it has been undone. They've been turned into these sort of mindless, alien-like, xenomorphic-like threats that impregnate human bodies and do horrific things to them, but they're still animals. They're still, aggressive, non-verbal creatures. They look monstrous and they act monstrous. But the irony of retconning them in this simplistic and stupid way is that it means that they no longer make sense as a spacefaring species. If you think about the archetypes for them, the aliens, the xenomorphs from the Ridley Scott, James Cameron, David Fincher franchise, these were creatures that relied on spacefaring civilizations to get them around, because they themselves didn't have any ships or technology. They were simply very, very highly advanced, intelligent predators, but still basically animals. Intelligent enough to be coordinated, intelligent enough to formulate plans, intelligent enough to strategize to hunt their prey, but not intelligent enough to build cities or ships or tools or any of those things. But the Gorn, we're asked to believe, despite being these crazed monsters, have got warships, battle vessels, all of which, different types of weaponry. And they've developed it to a standard to rival the Federation's. They are warp faring civilization. And yet, effectively mindless monsters. How does a species that starts off as a sort of instinct-driven creature and grows up to be an instinct-driven creature construct things like spacesuits and warp drives? How do they do it? And doesn't the fact that they have done it suggest that they can't be written off as monsters? I mean, you've never seen a conversation in Strange New Worlds where the characters get around a table and say, but the fact that they have warp drive, the fact that they have ships, the fact that they have got this far into deep space, surely means they can be reasoned with. I mean, after all, they must have a certain level of sophisticated intelligence. No one's asking those questions. So you're asking yourself, well, how do you defeat such a aggressive alien threat? Well, what you do is you steal from Best of Both Worlds. You put them to sleep.
I successfully planted a command into the Borg collective consciousness. It misdirected them to believe it was time to regenerate. In effect, I put them all to sleep.
It's very convenient when you meet an alien race that can be switched off. Michael Piller, God love him, and you won't hear me say anything against him on this show, but when he was faced with the almost impossible task of producing a second part of Best of Both Worlds to equal the first, well, he came up with a pretty smart workaround for how to defeat the Borg. Their collective consciousness. You could maybe feed a command in that would shut them off, put them to sleep. And luckily for the Enterprise, that glitch in the system caused the self-destruct in the Borg cube to be initiated, and they conveniently blew up. It's all a bit, it is convenient, but, at the time you thought, fair enough. The episode was so good, the character moments so good, the journey was so much fun, we almost didn't mind that the resolution was a bit convenient. Here, there's a highly convenient ending. The crew work out that the Gorn hibernate for long periods, like most reptiles. The reptiles hibernate anyway, and so they put them to sleep. So the invasion's called off. They haven't worked out how to forestall an invasion in the future, but that's a problem for another day. It's all very convenient, and so on. Now, have we been on a trip with the crew of the Enterprise, the original Enterprise here, to rival that of Best of Both Worlds? Has there been a substantial threat to one of our main characters? Have we gone through the emotional ringer worrying about them? Not really. I mean, the characters everyone's at risk, but the characters that the Gorn have captured are Lan, who's got a little mini redemption arc, who gets to defeat the Gorn after they kidnapped her as a kid or whatever. You've got M'Benga, who somehow you think is going to be fine because he seems to be indestructible, and he is, of course, as we know, a serial killer himself. We've got Sam Kirk, who we know won't die because he dies in the original series. It's a bit of a prequel problem. And we've got Ortegas, who we wish would die, but we know won't. We know she'll be kept around almost out of spite by the producers of this program. I like to say that she has at least one really obnoxiously stupid line in every episode. This was no different. When she was freed of her from the Gorn digestive chamber or whatever, she said, and I quote, "Holy crap, half my hand is frickin' gone." Because you'd really self-censor, you sort of half your fucking hand missing, wouldn't you? Gemini Part 2, really, it did everything right on paper. I mean, it was full of action and high stakes and so on. But the problem with it was that, as it always is with Strange New Worlds, nothing really seems to matter. It's all kind of irrelevant. There are certain characters that we know, because it's a prequel, will be fine no matter what's thrown at them. We know Pike will be alright. We know Spock will be alright. We know Uhura will be alright. We know Scotty will be alright. And all the others. Anyone who appears in the original series has got a... So who's left? Well, Ortegas, yeah, hopefully she will die eventually. Sam Kirk, we know he'll be okay. So there's no real threat to most of the characters under threat. And the situation is handled in such a sort of perfunctory way that there's never any sense that there's real danger. I mean, the writers of this show are going to have to find another way to make us care. There's the side plot with Captain Batal, or Pike's Peace, who, of course, had been, impregnated by Gorn or whatever. And we feared for her a little bit. But the writers of the show, for what it's worth, are going to have to be a lot more adept at trying to find proxy threats that are contingent on the Enterprise's actions and show them failing from time to time, just to hide the fact that the things that Pike and his crew do are consequential in some way. Because if they can't find a way to do that, then nothing that happens on the Enterprise matters. And if nothing matters, if it's all just a curtain raiser for TOS, well, why should we give two fucks?
Right.
Now, let's briefly talk about what we do know about the future of this show before we move on. We know that it's only going to go for 4.5 seasons. There's the forthcoming 4th season, 6-episode wrap-up, and that's it. We know from Akiva Goldsman that they intend to end sort of at the beginning of Kirk's 5-year mission, which presumably means that old Pike's going into his bleep chair. The series is going to end on a real emotional and cheerful high, with the central character becoming a quadriplegic. Now, that suggests on paper that TOS is going to be left alone, even if the two don't quite properly sync up. But you can do a lot of damage to original continuity, to original canon in just sort of 16 episodes. In the 16 on top of those they've already filmed. There are only two things that give me hope. One is that this group of writers don't really have the imagination to make any very bold moves, very bold incursions into original series canon. For example, and we'll talk about this a bit more with the next episode, Wedding Bell Blues, they put Kirk and Chapel together only to sort of chicken out and pull them apart again. And I imagine there's going to be a lot of that. A lot of be flirting with, storylines which are going to be curtailed so that they don't intrude onto TOS continuity. But of course the flip side of that is that if nothing that happens in this show has any real consequences or has any role in reframing our understanding of what goes on in the original series. And what's it for? It's a bit like a prologue novel in which you're not allowed to change anything. You know, you get the editor's note. Don't do it. Don't kill off anybody. Don't make any changes to you know, pre-established history. Well, okay, I agree with that, but again, then what's it for? What's it matter? Keith Goldsman once said that he had ambitions to, you know, push the boundaries here, flirt potentially with changing TOS continuity. Now, I'm not sure he has the balls or the authority to make that call. But these fuckers have got time to do some damage. They've already, remember, retrospectively annulled Space Seed and Wrath of Khan. And indeed, therefore, all of the original Star Trek movies. Well, after the second one. And this in a show that is light and whimsical usually and seemingly inconsequential, and yet potentially can do so much damage. That's the danger of it, I think. Anyway, when we come back after this commercial break, we'll talk about the second episode, Wedding Bell Blues, and an example of this, example of flirting with established canon, but if you like, pulling out before your idea can come to seed. See you in a moment.
Cholesterol levels of many Americans are too high, but for a group of people in New Jersey, cholesterol went down. They joined in a total dietary program to reduce cholesterol. Less fats, lean meats, egg and cheese substitutes, and highly polyunsaturated foods, including Promise margarine. Promise is highly polyunsaturated. The results? Their average cholesterol level went down. Down significantly. And Promise tastes like butter. Promise.
Well, I'm afraid we'll have to call the garage, Mrs. Olson.
Oh, thank you so much. I hate to be such a bother.
No bother at all.
Well, while we're all waiting, I'll make some coffee.
Don't you think she's got enough trouble?
Oh, I wish I could make coffee he likes.
I find you have to start with the right coffee. So I always use Folgers.
All coffee's the same, Mrs. Olson.
Oh, no. Different coffees taste different. And I think Folgers tastes best.
Why is Folgers so different?
It's specially blended.
Joe ought to like this. What's mountain grown?
Mountain Grown's the richest coffee there is. Try some.
Hey, that great smell coming from your coffee pot?
Uh-huh.
That's good coffee. There's one more problem.
Oh.
We're gonna have to get a bigger pot.
Get Folgers Mountain Grown Coffee. You'll like the flavor.
Someone just asked me why I wasn't flying the plane. You said, I'm not the captain. Anyway, we're on vacation. Can't they tell we're on vacation? Why does that look familiar? Because we've been there. I like it better here.
Frequent flyers like the future on Western Airlines.
It's the only way to fly. Only. What a novel concept. You sometimes wonder if maybe you have a drinking problem. You probably do have a drinking problem. For information or help, write alcohol. Box 2345, Rockville, Maryland.
Yeah, welcome yo ass back, as they say in Belgium. Now, episode 2 was Wedding Bell Blues, co-written by Kirsten Beyer of Star Trek novels fame. What was it about? Well, it was supposed to be a light-hearted, jaunty, whimsical follow-up to the action-heavy opener, Set in a starbase, primarily. It's 3 months later. Chapel comes back from her fellowship with Roger Corby, and would you believe it, they're engaged. Now that shouldn't shock you, of course, because if you know the original series and you've seen What a Little Girl's Made Of, you know that it is Chapel's fate to be engaged to Roger Corby, who will eventually become an android. And so on. But that's not enough to hook a whole episode on. So there's a strange complication. Oh no, you ask. Is this the episode in which Spock deals with that very human emotion of jealousy? Well, he is jealous, and there is a slight moment of that. You know, a little bit of him with his nose pressed up to the glass, wondering, why not me? Why has Chapel gone with this Irish bloke who's into romance and romantic gestures and poetry and, you know, understanding when there's a lovely moment on top of a mountain that he can capitalise on to get his leg over? Why is she gone for that and not my autistic shtick? It's a fucking mystery, isn't it? But of course, you can't beat the system, and that's why Spock has lost out here. Plus, Corby's very intelligent, etc., etc., pioneering immunologist and scientist. The scene is set for a lot of that long stares across rooms and lots of tension. But this is Star Trek Strange New Worlds. It's a cheery, chucklesome kind of show. So, on Starbase, they're visited by someone who looks a lot like Trelane from Squire of Gothos. And here referred to just as a cosmic trickster, who decides that it doesn't like Corby and therefore is going to cast a spell on everybody to reimagine the scenario as Spock and Chapel's wedding. And they believe it, of course, so everyone goes along with it. But weirdly enough, Corby isn't affected too much by the spell, tells Spock that it's all an illusion. Then Spock comes to his senses, and then it's just a question of them, you know, playing out the scenario for no reason until such times they can convince everybody else. The trickster in question says, you go along with it, I'm going to kill everybody, though you don't really believe that he would, because he seems too sort of silly and childlike for that. The Squire of Gothos without the menace. Now, I said before the break that this is a show that likes to flirt with TOS canon, but sometimes pulls back before it can cause mega damage. There's no question here that the intent is to reintroduce the Squire of Gothos. Now, there's been a long speculation in fandom that the Squire is a forerunner of the Q, or is a Q. And the show dares to cement that association here by having John Delancey himself show up as the Squire's father, but voice only. You've got a bit of plausible deniability, just as a bit of mystical stardust. But that'll be enough, won't it, for most people to say, you see, Squire's a Q, the first Q, and now they've suggested the Squire is Q's son. Though Q had a daughter, as I remember, not a son. But... oh, anyway, maybe they're just a family of Qs. Maybe the relationship tree doesn't matter. But you see what I mean? It's an attempt just to sort of reinforce that idea. But because the Squire is never named, because the word Q is never mentioned, just the old trick of clicking the fingers and things happening, it's all innuendo, it's all suggestion. Well, if anybody accuses Goldsman et al. of fucking with the original canon, he could say, well, it's open to interpretation. Doesn't have the guts to go all the way, because of course, you know, Q doesn't officially exist yet. They don't know anything about the race of Q at this point in the timeline. But then they're not supposed to know anything about the Gorn either, are they? And it's this asset-stripping approach to Star Trek that I find so obnoxious in Strange New Worlds. There are no ideas of their own here. It's just about what can we take, what can we steal, what can we use from all those better written stories of long ago. So in the end, you know, everything is restored to the way it was. Chapel looks set to marry into Corby's trouser press dynasty, and everything's fine. Did I miss anything out? Well, there's a scene in which Uhura dresses like the year 1971, which is weird, because if TOS is the space 60s, this should be the space 1950s, except she was dressed like the 70s, so I don't really understand. Well, it's the future, I suppose it doesn't matter. This episode introduced Wham to the Star Trek universe. Apparently, 300 years from now, they will still be dancing to Wake Me Up Before You Go at weddings. Now, if that doesn't scare you, I don't know what will. You're not even safe in space! Ortega is apparently suffering from PTSD from her Gorn experience. So, Lan, Noonien Singh, she's over it because she's had her bit of redemption. And she won't be dreaming about the Gorn anymore. But now Ortegas will be instead. So that's something to look forward to. So, what does this tell us about the third season to come, which of course is already in the can? Nothing you or I say or do can change a single frame of it. Only that it's going to be like the first two seasons. It's going to be light and colourful, and each episode is going to be slightly different genre-wise. There's going to be some encroachment into original series continuity, sometimes explicit, sometimes more covert and nudge nudge wink wink, and the shit's not really going to hit the fan probably until that 6-episode 5th season, in which exists purely to tie everything up. So that, I feel, are the 6 episodes where Goldsman and Henry Alonso Myers and all the other miscreants responsible for this show will really go for it. They've got their list of things to resolve before the Enterprise's 5-year mission with Kirk, including getting Kirk onto the bridge of the Enterprise once and for all, and they're gonna go through them. Maybe there are 6 things on that list, and one for each of those final episodes. Who can say? But one thing that is certain is that the original series, the show that began it all, that made you and I Trekkies, that made us want to watch Star Trek for so many years, and the only reason that we're tolerating this shit will be forever changed by what they do, unless unequivocally on screen it is established that this is a separate universe. Something that in the Alex Kurtzman era they've been frightened to do, because they know that would instantly make their Star Trek branded produce irrelevant. It is irrelevant anyway on dramatic grounds, but they don't want to formally declare that it's irrelevant. It would be like Ratner of Ratner's Jewellery famously going on TV and saying our product's crap.
People say to me, how can you sell this for such a low price? I say because it's total crap.
Well, that was the end of Ratner's, wasn't it? So, anyway, it's going to go through the motions. So shall we. I'll be back next week with another exciting edition of Strange New Wounds. And in the meantime, I encourage you to take this video as a substitution for watching the episodes themselves, because you'll have a lot more fun with me than you ever will with Captain Pike and his crew. I can almost certainly guarantee that. Till next time, I'm Dr. McAvoy. It's not my real name. Live long and yeah.
Absolutely smashing.